Very good. Very good. I think I'm in good cognitive health, or I don't know how I would say that exactly, but
Yeah.
that kind of, I'm trying to lead a little segue into our talk today, which we want to do. I know you've wanted to do this talk about dementia, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline. These are all buzzwords that people are kind of throwing around out there. There's a lot of science that's out there nowadays on trying to prevent this, because nobody wants to get these conditions. So what can you tell us? What is new? What can we do to help in these areas?
Okay, yeah, great question. Just to set the stage, as unbelievable as it may sound, when I was in medical school, there was a belief that there's nothing we can do to prevent cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease. And that perspective is changing very rapidly. There's still plenty of physicians that will give you a blank stare if you suggest to them that Alzheimer's disease, dementia, cognitive decline may be preventable. But there's very clear evidence that lifestyle plays a role in at least slowing the progression of Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline. If not, we don't have randomized controlled trials that have, in the way that we do with heart disease, where we can actually see an arrest of the disease progression, but we have a lot of great evidence suggesting that it can be slowed. So that's the new perspective, and we have new Alzheimer's and dementia prevention institutes popping up across the country, and a lot of money going into this research. And one of the latest studies coming from one of the centers that's pioneering this work just published a study looking at repetitive negative thinking and the association between repetitive negative thinking and developing cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, all right. So repetitive negative thinking, I think that everyone out there would agree that's not a good thing. But I don't know if anyone would know any more than just, oh, you just have a bad frame of mind. Just a temporary, like, hey, get over that. It's nothing permanent, but maybe you're suggesting something different here?
Yeah, and I think it's that's one of the provocative conclusions about this study, is that it's suggesting that maybe picking up a self-help book or thinking about changing our lifestyle or philosophy around our mental health should go beyond just waiting for a crisis or a bad event happens and we're mourning or we're depressed. And those are the instances where we try to improve our emotional habits of mind. Yet this kind of study is suggesting that that's something that we should all be proactively doing, because it's very easy and it's very common to get stuck in frames of mind that involve repetitive negative thinking. And in this study and in the medical literature, that's defined through an actual inventory that's given to individuals. And it really consists of ruminating about the past in negative ways and worrying about the future, which, right, connects to all of the, positive philosophies, whether you're talking about meditation or stoicism. They all, if you're trying to develop any sort of healthy practice, one of the core ideas is live in the present. Don't go into the past. Don't start worrying about the future. And in a time like this, that's obviously especially useful.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right, so it sounds like this mental balance, I suppose it sounds like a balance, right? No, you don't want to be fixating on the past. You don't want to be fixating on the future and things that you can't control and probably will never happen to you. You want to stay in the present. That's the balance point, I suppose. And it's not only just a temporary balance point, but from what you're saying, it sounds to me like this is a long-term overall body balance that we're talking about, and it's affected by everything in the present moment. So it's almost like that's key here, right? Because I've heard by many folks that say that when you're focusing on history, you're focusing on the past, you're living in a depressive state, right? And then when you're focusing almost exclusively on future events that may or may not and probably will not happen, you're in a state of anxiety, right? Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the, in the same way, with nutrition, one of the common pathways that we're trying to address is that chronic inflammation. The chronic stress, mind body, that dualist kind of way of thinking about our self really isn't compatible with scientific evidence. Our thoughts lead to changes in our physical health, like increased cortisol, increased blood pressure. All of these signs of chronic stress directly impact our long-term health and connect to our cognitive health. And that's what this study is showing. And if you want, I can explain a little bit about what the study was and what they found.
Yeah.
They took individuals over the age of 55, and they monitored them for 2 years. So this isn't a randomized control study. It still falls under the category of observational study, but it's the highest quality observational study that can be done. And it's the kind of observational study that they use to definitively show that cigarette smoking is bad for our health, because they couldn't, in good faith, perform a randomized control trial that subjected people to smoking ethically. That wouldn't be acceptable.
Yeah.
So what they did in this study, though, is they took individuals and they monitored them for at least 2 years. And during that 2-year time frame, the individuals at the start of the study didn't have any signs of cognitive decline, but they were at high risk. That's why they were at this center, because they had a family history that was that put them in the high risk category for developing cognitive decline. And so they were monitored over the course of at least 2 years, and they were monitored with this questionnaire about repetitive negative thinking. They were also monitored for symptoms of depression and anxiety. They were monitored using PET scans, which is an imaging technique that allows researchers to identify the beta amyloid and tau proteins that are associated with early Alzheimer's disease. So we don't know exactly whether the amyloid and the tau proteins are causal or if they're just a symptom of the disease, but we know that these get deposited fairly early in Alzheimer's disease. And when you want to diagnose someone with Alzheimer's disease, the definitive thing to do is, after they've died, you do a brain biopsy and you look for the presence of these proteins. So they were trying to look at, and then of course, they were doing these really exhaustive studies of the individual's memory, both long-term and immediate memory. They were assessing language, visuospatial thinking. So they were trying to understand their cognition broadly, and then also look for these markers of Alzheimer's disease over the length of study.
Okay. All right. Nice. So it was a pretty thorough job. And you've convinced me, let's put it this way, just in our little discussion here, you've convinced me, if we didn't already kind of know in our own conscience, that the best thing to do is to have a good attitude.
You're right.
Well, is that all we need to do, is just change our attitude, just snap our fingers and then we're all good? I mean, are there techniques? What do you recommend?
Well, let me first say, because this is an observational study, we don't know for sure that the repetitive negative thinking was the cause of the cognitive decline. Right. What was really powerful about this study, though, is that traditionally we have a lot of research that suggests that depression and anxiety are associated, obviously, with chronic stress and are tightly associated with cognitive decline. Those studies have been done many times, and that association's been found. What's interesting here is that in this study, again, repetitive negative thinking and depression, anxiety were associated with cognitive decline, but it was only repetitive negative thinking and not depression or anxiety that led to these precursors of Alzheimer's disease. So the researchers think that the problem with depression and anxiety may not be those disorders themselves. It may be the repetitive negative thinking that comes as a result of those disorders. And repetitive negative thinking may be the key explanatory variable that leads to all of these different, states that we want to be avoiding in older age. Now, to get to your question, which, sorry, I wanted to put that caveat out there because this is still early science. And one of the dangers of, and you see it often in the nutrition and wellness spaces, jumping on one study and trying to extrapolate globally a little too early. So I don't want to do that here. But I think, like you said, we all intuitively understand that to live our best life that's joyful and fulfilling, having a positive frame of mind is important. And then, but the motivation to start taking action, I think, when you realize, wow, this can potentially impact my memory, my ability to prevent see these serious diseases later in life. I better start working on this now. Well, we all can. And that's one of the exciting things, is that there's so many tools that are coming of age right now between, I think some great places to start are meditation. And, there's obviously mindfulness meditation, but just focusing on your breathing can be really powerful for centering and calming and getting into that present moment. I think gratitude practices are really powerful. And a lot of the meditation apps are starting to incorporate gratitude practices, because gratitude in particular seems to put us in a really positive frame of mind. So that seems like another really good place. And Stoicism has come of age recently. And I think that there's some really nice books that explain that practice and may, if for interested individuals, give people some insight into why simplifying your life and developing the emotional resilience of not being attached to things can actually really improve and add joy to life, because we stop becoming becoming so vulnerable to the vicissitudes of life, and we develop an inner reservoir of strength. And obviously, this is not my expertise. I'm very much a learner and early practitioner in all of these things. So I don't want to try to pretend like I'm some evolved soul. But I've found it to all of these things to be incredibly useful, and just benefiting my close relationships. If anyone's locked into an apartment with their loved ones and trying to figure out a way to, just on the level of coping with their loved ones, it could be, these are things that I've found useful. I'd be very curious, anyone listening who wants to give me suggestions, because I'm always trying to find out what's the best thing I can recommend to clients. So I'm very open to learning what the right practices are to cultivate that positivity that I think we all can benefit so much from.
Yeah, that's a great point. Please, if you're watching out there, please comment with some suggestions here. We'd love to see what you have to say about that. And just something that popped into my mind here when you were talking, Dr. Nick, is just the idea maybe of personal development, right? That whole concept of personal development, just even to take it away from a spiritual way, a notion of, but I think there's a huge spiritual component here. Don't get me wrong here, huge spiritual component. But from a personal development standpoint, it's almost like, as I mentioned earlier, well, how can we get ourselves to just stop having these negative thoughts? Well, personal development, right? There are so many ways to develop yourself. I mean, don't think that, hey, I think the worst attitude anyone could take would be to say, hey, this is just me. This is just who I am. This is just how I am. I always have this negative self-talk in my head, right? I'd say that's a very, it takes away the power from the individual, because I do believe the individual has the power to learn. Like you said, be a continual learner. develop these skills that will benefit them over time. And, we all start off at a different place. Some of us are just naturally good at these things, always happy. Others are just constantly depressed or constantly upset or have this negative talk in their minds, right? But that, I do
Yes.
believe, with enough work, and it does require work, I believe, that
Mm.
that could be developed into a balance point, like you're mentioning.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's very well said. And one of the exciting things about, you go on a journey of eating better, and then all of a sudden you see how it changes your health, and it empowers you in other ways. You realize, okay, well, what else can I dramatically change that people aren't talking about? It pushes you to start reframing the world around you, because you realize that a lot of limitations that we perceive and that we all take and assume exist, many of those limitations don't actually exist. And this isn't to say that we have complete control of our world, but we certainly do have, in a lot of cases, a lot more control than we realize to create the not just exterior life that we want, but interior life that we want. And there's the only it is work, but there are a lot of resources out there too that can provide insights into how to do this well, how to do it quickly, how to create habits. So, just like you say, we are all born with things that we struggle with. For some people, I just can't lose weight. I can't, I struggle exercising. I'm not athletic. I don't sleep well. And all of these things, they have root causes. And with persistence and real work, a lot of these things can be changed. Absolutely.
Okay, and one thing I wanted to say, I guess, to kind of wrap this up and bring it back around to what we usually talk about, it seems like,
Yeah.
which is nutrition. I do feel like, in my own personal experience, maybe I wasn't in my own, mental frame of mind, my own best balance point. I think, in my own personal experience, that just having the correct diet will bring you so much closer to that balance point. Like, if you say I can never get there, well, look at your diet first, right? Because I feel like what you eat becomes who you are. And if you're eating the wrong things, it's just going to throw you so out of whack that you may never be able to recover on the idea of personal development. You may never have enough, muster enough willpower to do it, because you can't. So I want to, I guess, recognize the importance of nutrition in this entire concept, even though it's not necessarily mentioned in these studies, but I do think there's a relationship.
Oh, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of evidence, and there's increasingly more evidence in the psychology literature of the importance on counseling their clients on diet. So this is all connected. And that's part of the interesting thing, is that, for some people, a person may be entering this maze of personal development with the intention of, I want to improve the way I think, and may realize that it's actually their diet they need to improve. Similarly, someone may enter thinking, okay, I need to improve my diet. They improve their diet, but then they discover the real thing that unlocks it is sleeping better. So we all, it's you start realizing as you enter this world that there's a lot of ways of improving your lifestyle to improve your health. But I couldn't agree with you more. We all have to eat, and we all make that choice every day. And it's such a powerful choice, not just for our physical body, but for our disposition, and the way the way it can energize you, the way it can sort of align your perspective towards compassion. And so I couldn't agree with you more. It's a great place to start.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited because I'm excited to know that having a positive attitude is going to benefit so many more things in the future. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. And if people want to contact you, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, just reach out to me through my website, nickborjamd.com. That's a great way to learn a little bit about the lifestyle counseling and coaching that I do, and sign up for a free initial consultation. I can do it in person or through Zoom, Google Meet, and love to try to help people take the steps they want to reach their best health. So,
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Nick.
thank you. Great talking.